glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel His mighty power and His grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
And today's reading from the Daily Word is on joy. The affirmation is, I express the spiritual gift of joy. Happiness can come into my life from the world around me. People, places, events, opportunities, these things and many more make me happy, and that's a good thing. Yet joy is different, such a small word with a sometimes complicated explanation. It's an essential part of who I am, a spiritual quality that remains unaffected by the corporeal realm. In challenging moments, joy lingers, helping soothe my soul, like all the spiritual qualities that define my Christ presence. I feel it most powerfully when I freely share it with others. When I connect with the eternal substance of joy, I find the strength of spirit to face external events or situations. Then he said to them, this day is holy to our Lord, and do not be grieved, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. From Nehemiah 8:10. As we hold in our hearts and prayers our brothers and sisters who are riding out the storm, I invite you now to think of those that you would like to hold in prayer, and if you would like to speak their names aloud, please feel free to do so now.
Steve.
Cindy. Ranger, Stacy.
And let us pray. Evoking the presence of great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion toward ourselves and toward all living beings. Let us pray that all living beings realize that they are all brothers and sisters, all nourished from the same source of life. May I be a guard for those who need protection, a guide for those on the path, a boat, a raft, a bridge for those who wish to cross the flood. May I be a lamp in the darkness, a resting place for the weary, a healing medicine for all who are sick, a vase of plenty, a tree of miracles, and for the boundless multitudes of living beings, may I bring sustenance and awakening, enduring like the earth and sky until all beings are freed from sorrow and all are awakened. So it is.
One power, one power, one power, one power. invisible, and you see it everywhere and every day. One power indescribable, and you speak of it with every word you say. Mysterious until you know the truth, as simple as the love inside of you. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, angels' wings or heaven's door. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? It's the power of the love in you and me. One power, one power, one power, one power. We speak so many languages, different clothing, different colors, different names. The different is only dangerous when we forget that in the heart we're all the same. And we'll remember once we close our eyes to see that such distances were never meant to be. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, Hashem or heaven's door. It's Muhammad, it's your mind, it's your soul, or it's your sign. It's the universe, it's music, Mother Earth or Father Time. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? Whatever name you give it, it's the very air we breathe. Oh, it's the power of the love in you and me. One power, oh, one power is what we are. One power, one power. It's the freedom of forgiveness. It's the sweetness of release. It's the joy of inspiration. It's the sunshine on your face. It's the birthright of all nations. It's the boundlessness of space. It's the beauty of a baby, the serenity of sleep. It's the anger we abandon for its love that's most deep. It's one power. It's one power. What we are is one power. It's the power of the love that lives forever in you and me. It's the power of the love in you and me.
I wasn't sure that I was being introduced because I was thinking about the fact that I pulled out a suit that I haven't worn for 30 years and the pants are falling off me. And so if anything happens like that, please Look the other way, please. Well, it's a wonderful pleasure to be with you again and to experience the commitment and dedication that you have to this marvelous teaching that is unity. I always love to have one of my groupies show up here. We've been a part of Dorothy and my ministry in Sacramento years ago. Nice to have you, Ken. I want to also begin by commenting on something that Peggy and I crossed paths with this past week, and you didn't mention it, but I think you were contacted by somebody from Poland this week, weren't you? Yeah. And they had contacted, I believe, the Unitarian Church here, and they contacted you because they were trying to get in touch with me. And subsequently, I have had contact with these two professors who are one of Poland's great universities there, and they apparently have come across my book, which is one of my books that I've written. This one is called The Metaphysics of Buckminster Fuller. And they are tremendous fans of Bucky, and so one of them was very excited because he was coming to Stanford to be there for a week and asked if he could possibly have some time with me. So tomorrow I will be going down to Stanford and have some time with this gentleman from Poland. Thank you, Peggy, for playing part in that process. Last time I was with you, I talked about something that has always been foremost in my mind, and that is that the more we advance in the field of science, the more we seem to be coming close to an affirmation of what metaphysicians have said for generations of time, and that is that we are spiritual beings, and that it is consciousness that directs and unfolds our lives. In particular, last time I talked to you about the incredible analogy that we have with what most of us are familiar with called the GPS system. Is there anybody here that isn't familiar with the GPS system? Okay, the GPS system is a marvelous system that the scientists have worked out where they have satellites going around the globe all the time that they have been able to work out so that we have equipment in our cars or in our phones so that we can make contact with those wonderful satellites and find out right where we are and also where we need to go to be somewhere where we want to be. It's an incredible thing. And I talked last time I was with you about the fact that to me this parallels something that is basic to the Christian teaching. And it is why people of all faith have such marvelous demonstrations of our relationship to God. And that is, we all operate under a God positioning system. A God positioning system, a GPS. And that is that the mind or the intellect that we call God is in constant awareness of every one of us. Every one of us has a personal relationship with that intelligence which we call God. And it is constantly seeking to position each one of us to live a life that is demonstrable of what God's own nature is, which is absolute good. It includes good health, obviously. It includes provision and prosperity. It includes all the ingredients which any one of us would think of as a good life. God is capable of positioning us so that we can experience those things. There's only one necessary ingredient that we talked about 2 weeks ago, and that is we have to turn the system on. We have to turn the system on. And I think that I affirmed for you at that time that the way you do that is to love God with all your heart and soul and mind, which merely makes God real. You know, you can talk about God, you can say, oh, there is a God, and whatever you want to say about God, but unless you spend time in making the connection by being so certain of the reality of God that you love God with all your heart and soul and mind. Did I use one of my old chestnuts last week about the man and woman who were married and been married for some time, and the wife said to the husband, "You never tell me that you love me anymore." Did I tell you that one?
No.
Oh, good. It's my favorite. So the wife says, "You never tell me that you love me anymore." And he was silent for a moment, and he looked at her and he said, "When we got married, I told you I love you, and if I ever change my mind, I'll let you know." And the reason that that's sort of laughable is that that's the way our relationship for many of us is to God, you know. Oh, God is wonderful. I love God. But unless you're talking to God all the time, the GPS isn't turned on. So anyway, we talked about that last week. And what I want to do this week is to tell you some stories, is all. To affirm for you that I didn't share that with you because I read it in a Unity book. I share that with you because I have been so blessed that somehow I came into this world, I don't know why, but I came into this world with this kind of relationship. I thought God was real, and I thought that it was true that God is my Father. I mean, Jesus said that, and therefore I had this presence that is God, my Father, with me all the time, and thought I was sort of special, like any father would think their child. I just believed that. So I expected good things to happen and have all my life. And my favorite affirmation is, "I look with wonder at that which is before me. Miracle follows miracle, and wonders never cease." I live with that. I have been so blessed to have so many marvelous things happen. Things that are way beyond what you could explain intellectually. And it is not because I am any better than anyone. There's probably no sins that anybody could come up with here, short of stealing from a bank or something, that I wouldn't say, "Oh, I've done that too." So there's nothing different about me except one thing that I think is different from as I feel where most people are. I really live with this sense of this presence that I love with all my heart and soul that is with me. And when we do that, we're tuned in, and great things happen. I'm going to talk about a couple of things that have to do with building churches, but I want to share this as an example of how good things happen that are beyond the norm when you live this way. I was privileged to go to one of the poshiest prep schools in the country at Newport, Rhode Island for 4 years. I was privileged to go to one of the top colleges in the country, located at Haverford, Pennsylvania. I was privileged to go to 2 years of seminary at Unity School, and none of it ever cost me a penny. And I never had to take a test. I never had to do any of that. How do those things happen? Well, I'm not going to tell you that story, how it happened. But seriously, that happened. For instance, when I was at the prep school, I had the privilege of dancing one night with a lovely young lady by the name of Jacqueline Bouvier. And some of you know her as Jackie Kennedy and Jackie Onassis. And you know, before the night was out, she was clinging to me saying, "Don't make me go back. Don't make me leave. Don't make me leave." Now, I'm not going to tell you how that story happened, but that is an absolute true story, no embellishments. That's the absolute truth, and those were her absolute words. What I want to tell you about is not near as exciting, perhaps, but it's real because it deals with the practical. When I went to Hawaii, was asked to go to Hawaii and take the ministry there, that ministry had been started by a woman named Marie Hanley. and had done such a wonderful job and had bought property on Lewis Road. And those of you who've gone to Hawaii know that Lewis Road is one of the main streets in Waikiki. And before she retired, she and the board sold the property to a fellow named Roy Kelly. Roy Kelly is probably the biggest independent hotel owner in Hawaii, and some of you may have stayed at his Outrigger Hotels. In any event, he agreed for the right to buy that property. He agreed to build a little chapel on the main floor of the hotel that he was going to build, and to provide that and some office space, limited office space there. When I arrived with that consciousness. I looked with wonder at that which before me, miracle follows miracle. And I looked at the plans and saw that the chapel was for something like 80 people, would seat 80 people. Well, Marie had a wonderful group, about 30 or 40 people, so I guess that seemed okay, but in the terms of an expectation of tremendous expansion, I thought, this is never going to be right, because you can't build a church with that kind of limitation. So I immediately met with Roy Kelly and said, I think that we're going to look for church property elsewhere. And I can't remember the figures, but I think he had paid $250,000 for the property, which in those days was quite a bit of money, and had agreed to build his chapel. So anyway, he said, well, whatever you decide. I knew real well that he just assumed we didn't have a chapel in his hotel. But so we started to look. And we looked up the Poly area where there were big estates, because that was my vision, having this big estate, and looked everywhere. And one of my board members who really was working with me most was a wonderful woman. And but we found nothing. And so I went back to Roy Kelly and I said, we really haven't found anything, so go ahead with the chapel construction. About 2 weeks later, my wife Dorothy and I were at home having lunch, and we lived in an apartment right on the slopes of Diamond Head, and got a phone call. And the phone rang, and I answered it, and this gentleman said, I'm so-and-so with such and such a realty company. He said, I understand you're looking for a church property. And I said, well, we were, but we're not now. And he said, oh. And he said, oh. And in that second, I suddenly found myself saying, but I'm in interest. Where is this property? And he said, well, it's at 3608 Diamond Head Circle. I said, Diamond Head Circle? That's right around the slopes of Diamond a little ways. So I said, well, we'll look at it. So we literally just walked down a little garden path that was there near the apartment and came right out to Diamond Head Circle. And of course, when we walked into the main entrance, it was shaped like an octagon, all paneled wood, and Dorothy and I looked at each other and we suddenly, this is it. We just knew almost instantly it was it. There are no churches on the slope of Diamond Head, but one, Unity Church. Have any of you been there? Yeah, good. It's a beautiful setting. It's right on the entrance to Diamond Head Circle. And Diamond Head Circle has some of the oldest and wealthiest families in Hawaii living on that. So after we said to the folks, we want to buy it, they said, well, you're going to have to approach the people who live here to get permission, or they're going to fight you. And so I had a meeting with all these folks, and told them about what the Unity philosophy was, and I had our architect that we had already had give us sketches of what he saw being on this property. Anyway, lo and behold, they all said yes. I'm sure they've lived, in quotes, intellectually to regret that. Because we started out with about 40 or 50 people, and of course it grew to the hundreds, and we had several services, and the ministers that have subsequently followed have had the same kind of success. It's a beautiful setting. But the point I want to make from this is that when this connection of God positioning system works for you, you find that there are always little, at least I have found, and I think some of you have found too, little things you just say, hey, I just want you to know I got my eye on you, because this is really unique. And also, you find that in most cases, that before you even brought up the question, the answer was already there. It was provided. And so, when we got around to signing papers and everything, and we met the lady who owned the property, she told us, or the realtor told us, I've forgotten now, which. The day we called you, this lady has just decided to drop the price of the property because she was in a divorce and she was tired of being hung with this property. So she just said to her realtor, I want to drop the price of the house, I want to sell it. And then she said, I have a friend named Barbara Crockett. And Barbara Crockett is on the board of a church, and I heard from Barbara they were looking for property. That's why he called us. But Barbara Crockett had died about a month before. The little that says, hey, I got you covered, right? And that property was always sitting there. She was wanting to sell it. A little PS to this. As we grew, we knew we needed more space. So there was a house next to us that was rented to the British Consulate. And at the board meetings, we said, we really need that property. So I called the representative, the man who owned it, who lived on the mainland. And I said, we really would like to buy this property. And he said, well, you possibly can. But he said, I know the man bought it to make a lot of money on it. And I told him what I thought was a fair price. He says, you're not in his league. And so we released it. But you know, after the board meetings, we would walk to some steps that were going up to a wall there, and we'd act like I'd act, like I was walking up those steps to go to our property next door. I got a phone call out of the blue one day, maybe 2 months later or so, and this man said, are you still interested in buying that property next door? I said, we sure are. He said, we'll accept your price. He said, the owner has gotten himself in financial trouble and needs cash. Whoa. I look with wonder at that, what you before me, miracle follows miracle, and wonders never cease. Okay, I'm going to tell you another property story. It sort of relates to what Peggy told me about how you found this place too, how Spirit is always working for us individually and always puts the trademark of, I love you, I'm working for you. Believe it. Believe it. When Dorothy and I were asked to come to Hawaii, we were leaving Hawaii. We were asked to go to Sacramento. And it followed on the fact that a month or so before, Dorothy and I were out walking our dog, and I didn't tell you why we were in Hawaii too. A lady came to us one day and said, you know, my husband, I'm doing it again. My husband and I have just built our new house in at about the 3,000, no, it wasn't 3,000 foot, about 800 foot level, but high enough we had a whole view of the ocean. Brand new house. She said, my husband used to be the plantation manager for C&A Sugar, and they've asked him to come out of retirement and go back. And I said, I'll only go back if the Pearsons will live in our house. So we moved into this brand new, fully furnished house for nothing, with the gardener and the maid and the whole bit. And it was only supposed to be for a year. We lived there for 3 more years until we were asked to come to Sacramento. Okay, I got to get to Sacramento quickly now. We're coming to Sacramento. We were asked because they had tremendous problems, as some of you might know from the distant past. They were financially in debt. The congregation had fallen off to practically nothing. They were meeting in the Crest Theater, which was sad because they had 600 people. They were down to less than 200 people, so the theater looked practically empty on a Sunday morning. And so when Dorothy and I got there, we said, what would lift the morale of these people? Because they lost all their money and and the church owed $100,000 to a local bank, unsecured. Terrible situation. People were mostly unhappy because they had lost all the building fund money that they had been saving for years. I won't tell you how that happened, but it did. And so Dorothy and I said, the thing that would lift the morale of these people most, if we could find a place for them to meet and call their own. So we looked, just like we did in Hawaii, we looked everywhere, couldn't find anything. One day, however, we were going to a Sunday school teachers meeting, and a lady who had just decided to help in Sunday school said, do you mind if my husband comes along? She said, he doesn't come to the church, but he said he wanted to be with me today. Unusual. And I said, well, I'll ask the minister. I said, sure. So he ended up sitting next to me, driving to this meeting. I'm trying to think, what had I talked about to this guy about he's not even a true student? So I said, you know, our church really needs to find a place they can meet. And he said, oh. Well, he says, you know, my boss owns an old bowling alley. It's been empty for a couple of years now. He said, it's right in downtown, opposite Capitol Park. So anyway, to make a long story short, that turned out to be where we ended up. And again, it just goes on and on. We got back and found they wanted $10,000 to even start the paperwork on it down. We didn't have any money and owed all this money. But we had a meeting of some of the folks after church one day, and I said to them, we need to affirm that somehow we'll have $10,000 by Monday when these folks had given us that much time. And a wonderful lady came up to me afterwards and she said, I have $10,000 you can have. So we had our $10,000. Anyway, I don't want to go on any longer on this except to say this. As some of you might have visited there know, we bought the bowling alley. We got completely out of debt by incredible things like I'm telling you, the way Spirit works. We got totally out of debt. Congregation grew so that we transformed that bowling alley and seated 500. We had 2 services pretty full. So it was working out wonderfully. We had associate ministers. And I think the third one was a guy named John Cuddyback. And after he left us, as always, he went on to take a church of his own in Florida. Bless Florida today. But he took a church in Florida. And one day he called me and said, you won't believe what I just discovered. They have a library here with old Unity books in it. And he said, I found a Unity magazine, and it said where the Unity Church was in something like 1918. Or no, would have been, yeah, could have been 1918. But give or take, it was around then. He said, the Unity Church, the first Unity Church in Sacramento, was located at 1415 L Street. That's the property we bought, 1415 L Street. Oh, wow. This is what I said. Before we started to look for a place of our own, and Dorothy and I said, we need to find a place where these people can call home. It was sitting there. It was already prepared, right at the address where the church had started. Wow. I look with wonder at that which is before me. Miracle follows miracle, and wonders never cease. And I just have found that all my life to be true. So back to the title. I should have started with this, but I didn't. What was my title? I've seen... We have seen a lot. We have seen a lot. How many of you have seen the Farmers Insurance ad? Remember all those crazy things they say, and the guy walks in and he says, well, because we've seen a lot, we know a lot. And that's what I'm trying to tell you today. I haven't shared this because I read it in a book, or it says so in the Bible. I share what I share because I've seen it. I've seen how it works when you turn on the switch by loving God with all your heart and soul and mind, and not like that man with the wife that he only told he loved her once, that all through the day you tell God, I love you. I am so grateful for the way in which you meet my every need. You do it sincerely, and it's got you. It's got you, and it will take care of you, and doors and windows will open that will bless you so wondrously no matter where you are in your life and your life's unfoldment. If you have not practiced living this way, it isn't easy. Just like the man of my joke who would suddenly start telling his wife all day, I love you. She'd fall over backwards maybe, but God wouldn't. God would just say, welcome home. Welcome home because I love you. When, I read a lot of science, and I love seeing what's happening in the world of physics, as I shared to some degree the last time I was with you. And it's wonderful that they're coming closer to that realization that life is consciousness. But I see so many empty spaces when they say, these brilliant men, some who are beginning to say they can see that life is consciousness, they still have all the missing links in putting it together that basic unity covers so wonderfully well. One of the basic questions in physics is there anyone to hear the tree fall in the woods if you're not there to hear it? And this was Einstein's, big struggle with them too. Is there a real world if you're not looking at it, if you're not involved in it? And of course, Charles Fillmore made such a point of the power of what he called race consciousness. And Teilhard de Chardin, the great evolutionist and Catholic Jesuit priest and scientist, told us about his conviction that there is a noosphere around the earth that is real as every one of our other spheres, and it is an energy that is impacting us all the time. I believe that the reason the tree falls in the woods and there's a sound, whether anybody is there to hear it or not, that there is this real world other than us is because race consciousness is what keeps it all together. I can't, it's so hard to turn off. I just love all this. But I wonder that you've come all these years as often as that. But anyway, I'm going to shut up. I am. Well, just one thing leads to another, But maybe you'll have me back again. I'll pick up again like I did this time. Okay? But I do conclude by telling you that I love God. Because I love God, I love each one of you. Because each one of you is that incredible expression of God. And each one of you has this direct connection. Okay. This is the absolute last one. I'm going down because these men are coming all the way from Poland because they love Buckminster Fuller. The man I'm meeting with is spending all his time in the archives at Stanford University because that's where they have Bucky's, his life memorabilia, everything about him. What was basic to this great scientist, Bucky Fuller? He believed everything he did was done intuitively. The God connection. May you keep your God connection open by your love for God. Bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Phil. That was awesome. We're going to be singing our song we've got coming up. You've got the words, I believe, most of you. If not, Liz might have a couple extra copies. And think about the words. Our thoughts are prayers. And think about what Reverend Phil Pearson just enlightened us with. Everything that he did, every move that he made, he was in alignment with divine mind. And that is when our thoughts are prayers. So please sing along, and then we'll do a meditation.
Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Listen to what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes a prayer. Our thoughts are prayers, the tools that we create with. Our thoughts are prayers that spirit resonates with. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of mindfulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes a prayer. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Listen to what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes a prayer.
Okay, so I invite you now to get comfortable in your chair. Put your papers down and feel the chair seat under your seat. Feel your feet connected to the ground beneath you. Breathe in that life force energy that is the divine light working in and through you as intelligence. Every cell in your body is breathing in this energy, making use of it in its divine wisdom. With every breath, and with those breaths we release everything that does not serve us right now in this moment. We release stress in our body with each breath. We release the anxiety in our minds with each breath. And we settle down into that center, that sacred, holy space at the center of our being. And know that all is well in this moment. All is well. And all is as exactly as it should be. And now that we have created, just by becoming aware of this sacred center, we create a space that can be filled with the love that you already are. I invite you to breathe into your heart center as if it is your heart doing the breathing, and allow that breath to expand your heart center. And with each expansion, you are allowing for more and more joy. you feel your being filling up with joy. And you can rest in this space, allowing that joy to enfold you, knowing that it comes from the highest place. It is the result of your connection to the divine. And so we have created these sacred spaces that are protected. They're protected. And we can bring into this space that is so protected, so strong. We can bring into it those with whom we are holding in prayer. Those with whom we may feel need our prayers. And so I invite you to bring those into your space. And as you do, you are going to see and know that this joy is enfolding them also. For this joy is divine intelligence working as love. So bring them into your space. And now you may recognize that as they are enfolded with this love, you see that they didn't need your prayers in the first place. Now we can see them for who and what they truly are. Another expression of the Divine One mind. Another expression of Source, where they too are holding this light. They too are resonating with divine love. And so as we can make this connection, all we are doing is reminding ourselves that they are already whole and perfect. And simply with the act of remembering this truth, we spark that divinity within their consciousness so that just in case they have forgotten, now they can remember as well. So I invite you to sit with this for just a moment. We'll do so in the silence. And we'll just continue to breathe in life, knowing that truly all is well. Now in the silence. And now gently bringing your awareness back to this room, back to your neighbors around you. I invite you to repeat these affirmations. I am love. I am love. When I am connected to my divinity, I am the truth. I live this truth. I am whole. I am healthy. I am prosperous. I live this truth. That there is one presence in my life. There is one true source. And from this source I gain my strength. And so I am free to live with wonder. And I see the miracles. And so it is.